Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This time, as you can see, I'm just here via the audio waves and not in video form, and let me tell you why. Many of you probably know that I record a podcast with my brother-in-law called Otaku Brothers. That's largely why I don't do YouTube videos consistently anymore. And last weekend we took a Saturday to brainstorm new ideas for the show, what we wanted to do with the show moving forward, and so we didn't record a traditional episode. But Sunday rolled around, and I still wanted to get behind the mic and chat, so I took the opportunity to talk on that episode 107. I will post that link below, where the show is going, ideas Ryan and I have planned, but I also had something in mind that I've been thinking about for a while. I've been wanting to do a YouTube video about it, but I just haven't had the chance to do so. But I figured, why not just talk about it on the podcast episode itself? And that is how my video game collecting habits have changed. And they've changed pretty significantly, certainly since 2010 when I unboxed Dragon Ball Origins 2 on the Nintendo DS. And so I spent about 35 minutes talking through, when I really considered myself a quote-unquote collector of video games. And a lot of that was the influence of the YouTube gaming community. So I kind of recount why I started my YouTube channel to begin with, the influence it had on my buying habits as it relates to video games, and how really over the course of the past decade, my buying habits have changed pretty significantly, and my collection itself has changed rather drastically. I've really pared it down to kind of be the Rusty's greatest hits, if you will, and that's really what I go into in this episode, is talking through the consoles I still collect for, the games I'm still seeking out, and I also kind of just talk about what it was like, 10, 15 years ago, going to places like Half Price Books, going to mom and pop shops, browsing eBay, and how it was so much easier to find game deals as opposed to today where it's really challenging to go into stores because everyone understands and knows the worth of video games nowadays. It's no secret to even the grandmas and grandpas out there and the mom and pop shops. Everyone kind of has a much clearer understanding how much these games are going for. And so I kind of go into that and how that's influenced me to kind of go in a different direction and really just embrace the type of games that I love, which if you've been a follower of the channel for a long time, you'll know that's mostly really janky Disney licensed games, 3D platformers, RPGs, things like that. So hopefully you'll get a kick out of this. And if you want to listen to the full episode, again, you can click that link in the show notes below. You can follow the podcast on all your favorite podcasting platforms, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. We're out there. In the beginning half of the episode, I talked about, once again, kind of the vision for the Otaku Brothers podcast going forward, ideas Ryan and I have, guests we plan to have on, and I also spend about 20 minutes talking about Final Fantasy XII, The Zodiac Age, because that is the game that I'm currently really enjoying my time with. So if you want to hear all that, you can find the full episode below. Otherwise, I hope you'll tune in for the next 30 or so minutes to hear about how my video game collecting habits have changed. And since this is just audio, maybe you can just listen to it while you're going on a walk. Maybe you're playing a great video game, grinding an RPG or something like that. Or maybe you're just trying to get through the workday. I hope this finds you well and it entertains you a bit. And maybe, I know we don't have traditional YouTube response videos anymore, but maybe it'll inspire you to create a response video. Or if you have a podcast of your own, I would love to hear you talk about this because I think it's such an interesting topic. And it's always going to mean different things to different people. So consider recording yourself on YouTube. Maybe you do a podcast episode, whatever it is. But flag me on Twitter. Send me a DM here on YouTube. Whatever it is, I would love to tune in and hear where you're kind of at with your collecting habits here in the year 2021. And while I won't promise you more YouTube videos in the future, there is something special that I have planned for my 11-year YouTube anniversary that I kind of briefly tease here in this episode. So stay tuned, and thank you everyone so much for tuning into this. All right, so we are about 45 minutes into this show and I still haven't gotten to the main topic. That's typical of me, just continuing to rant about all kinds of nonsense, but the rants are going to continue here with this main topic of discussion. Again, this is something that I constantly think about, and my approach is always, I guess, evolving in a certain sense, and I think many people can probably relate, but I love thinking about, talking about game collecting because it means something different to everyone that considers themselves a collector or a video game hobbyist, whatever you want to classify it as. I think everyone approaches it a little bit differently, and I know for me, my video game collecting habits have changed significantly over the years, and certainly in the past few after getting married, they've changed pretty drastically, I guess, in terms of the types of games I buy, my motivation for buying and collecting, and certainly the types of games that I buy. And so I just wanted to talk through that because I think it's such an interesting conversation, and hopefully it'll lead others to either respond to this directly in Discord or, gosh, I miss the days of YouTube response videos. I think that's a bygone era. It no longer exists, but maybe this will inspire someone out there to create a YouTube video talking about how their game collecting habits have changed, or maybe you have a podcast of your own that you'll continue the dialogue and the conversation about game collecting, because I think it's definitely a fascinating one. But let's take it back to, I guess, the roots of when I considered myself to be someone that was an avid collector of games. And it's a story that most people know, especially if you're listening to this podcast. When I first started my YouTube channel back in 2010, I think it was June or July, that summer before starting my senior year of high school, I had recently reacquired a DS. When I originally got my DS Fat, I sold it and all the games I had in order to get a PSP. And then a few years later, I was just really in the mood to play the next generation of Pokemon games, which was Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, which, hello, we're getting the remakes. But I got Platinum, my DS Lite, Mario Kart DS, and a few games, and I just wanted game recommendations. And so at the time, I went to YouTube and just searched for DS recommendations or DS collection or whatever it was. And I've told this a number of times, but I always like revisiting it because I feel like I'm reliving those memories of, getting ready to start my senior year of high school, pretty stress-free life, not really a care in the world outside of my studies and hanging out with friends and playing video games. Good times. But I'm sure everyone can, if you are part of the YouTube gaming community, the 3 channels that I most likely stumbled upon when searching for DS games back in 2010. And it was Pete Dorr, Craig, TV and Lust, and Finn Gamer. All 3 really great people. All of them are creating something in a certain sense still out there, whether it's YouTube videos or Pete's streaming, and Finn Gamer occasionally will record some stuff for YouTube as well. But it was those 3 channels that I just couldn't believe that there were these people out there on the internet recording themselves talking about video games and showcasing their collection of games, whether it was a specific console or they're walking through their game rooms and just showing how they've over the years amassed this crazy, awesome collection of games and memorabilia and consoles and things of that nature. And it really inspired me to think like, I think I could do that, because that was a day and age where it was so simple to just grab a camera or a really crappy webcam through one of your HP laptops and just sit in your game room or your living room or your garage. I mean, back then, there was no real standard or expectation that the video you were creating would have anything resembling quality, right? Whether it was the lighting in the room, the audio, whatever it was, you expected the picture to look like there was Vaseline smeared all over the camera and your voice was going to be super muffled, your air conditioner was going to be going on in the background. But that was the beauty of the YouTube gaming community back then, because it just had kind of this raw, feel to it where no one really cared about the quality and the view count and the thumbnails and the clickbait. It was kind of just like this community of like-minded people that wanted to share in this mutual love and hobby of video games, collecting them, and hopefully inspiring others to play games that they might not otherwise have played, because not many people were talking about the E series or Dragon Quest and things of that nature back then. And so to watch these people like Pete, like Craig, like FinGamer speak so passionately about these games and share the collection of games, it inspired literally an entire generation of people to either begin collecting games, younger folks like myself, or maybe people in their 20s and 30s and 40s to reminisce and have fun memories of their past as a kid playing the NES or the Atari 2600 or the Sega Genesis, and wanting to repurchase and reacquire that collection of games that they had as a kid but maybe sold off. And I was kind of at that stage in my life, even as how old are you when you're a junior in high school? Like 15, 16, 17? I don't even know. I think I was like about 16 or 17. I wanted to start getting DS recommendations. But of course, that led into this whole rabbit hole of like, oh my gosh, look at all these PS2 games Pete has. What is this DS game called The World Ends With You that Craig speaks so highly of? Oh my word, look at the complete N64 collection that FinGamer has. What in the absolute world is Phantasy Star and Ease that Johnny Happy Console Gamer keeps talking about? How in the world did Gamester 81 get the number of consoles that he did and that he still has to this very day? You know, it was just such a fascinating time, and it really kind of sparked something in me to want to begin collecting video games in a different way than I had growing up, because growing up, my parents got me a teal Game Boy Color and a copy of Pokemon Red. They got me the N64, and I was so young at the time, I don't remember asking for these things, right? It was one of those things that I was just so thankful that I had parents that were, I guess, in the know or something like that. Maybe the neighbors were buying these things for their kids, and my parents were like, oh, that just seems like a neat new toy that my sister and I might like. And so they got us those things. But growing up, I never really had the mentality necessarily of I'm always going to keep the box and manual for every N64 game that I get or Game Boy Color game that I get. And even when I got the PS2 and the GameCube and things of that nature, like I always kept really good care of my stuff, and I always made sure my manuals were in pristine condition. And when I would loan games to my friends, I always made sure I got them back. I never wrote on my N64 cards or anything like that, but I never considered myself a collector. I loved video games so much, and it was my greatest hobby. And I also always felt like in my friend group growing up, I was always the one that loved it just a little bit more than everyone else, you know. And certainly as I got older, I went through middle school and then really getting into high school, you know, that's kind of where I didn't like separate from my friend groups. I still hung out with my friends and stuff like that. And we still talked, and we still hung out and played Rock Band and Guitar Hero and Madden and Call of Duty 3 and Halo and all of those things. But then I'd go home and play things like Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2, or I would turn on my N64 and play Perfect Dark with a bunch of bots and multiplayer, or I would boot up my PS1 and revisit old save files of Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, Miss Pac-Man, Maze Madness, things of that nature that my friends just didn't really understand. And it's neither here nor there, but it's just one of those things where I came to the realization that I just love video games differently than some of my inner circle, my close friends at the time. And that just continued to evolve, and to a point where I was never ashamed of it, right? I mean, I loved playing video games, and no one really made fun of me or anything like that. But I also got to a point where I was wondering, there's got to be other people out there that are my age that feel similar to me. They're in my shoes, where their inner circle just doesn't quite care about video games as much as they do. And that's obviously what YouTube fortunately was able to give to me, or introduce me to, I should say, was this community of people that felt the exact same way that I did. and it opened up the gates to a whole new world, quite literally, of games and game series that I never would have otherwise played. I've already mentioned stuff like Ys on the PSP, Oath and Felghana, 7, Chronicles 1 and 2, the Dragon Quest series. My goodness, thanks to Johnny, Happy Console Gamer, I don't think I ever would have played games like that if it wasn't for them. And Pete Dorr, Craig from TV and Lust, Steph's Too Deaf, Splatter Trigger, Retrocalypse, Fem Trooper, Ballin' Nick 1980-something, Comeback Kid. I mean, there's so many I could go on and on. It would be so fun. And Pete Dorr actually did this. He kind of did this Reminiscing Twitch stream where he went back and watched a bunch of old YouTube videos of people that were in the gaming community. Many channels are kind of just a barren wasteland, because people haven't uploaded videos in so long, and that kind of gets into what I think I've already mentioned, is that the community just isn't what it once was, and YouTube in general just isn't what it once was. It doesn't really favor new creators, people that are just getting started. It really favors the people that have the hundreds of thousands and millions of YouTube videos, or subscribers, I mean, and then you get into like just the millions of ads on YouTube videos and all of that stuff. And it's really difficult to be seen nowadays in the YouTube space. And I feel so fortunate, and I've said this so many times, but I can never say it enough, that I was seen, like I felt like back then anyone could be seen. And you still can. I mean, I would never want to discourage anyone from pursuing something that they love. Continue to make YouTube videos if you're doing that. But back then it was just different. There's really no way to explain it or understand it unless you were really a part of it, And getting back on track here, just talking about collecting and how my habits have changed and how that inspired me to collect. There were these things that people still do today called pickup videos, where you would just kind of amass a number of games, and then you go on camera and you would share each of the games that you picked up. And it became this thing where I almost felt like I needed to do that. It was almost like a keeping up with the Joneses mentality, where all of these people were doing these games I bought recently, or pickup videos, or new games episodes. And I did the same thing. I was doing pickup videos pretty frequently, like once a month, so I was going to play in trades and GameStops and garage sales and flocking to eBay. I also used a site called Game Teasy, Game Trading Zone, which I still go on every once in a while. It was a great place to get deals that were from like-minded collectors, so you didn't have to pay the rates that the eBay was necessarily charging you. And this was also about the same time that I created a Backloggery account when I first started my YouTube channel. And so not only was I amassing all of these games, which felt so good, in a certain sense, like buying games feels really, really good. And part of that was not only having the games come in the mail, or walking out of a store with a pile of games, or leaving someone's house, walking away from a garage sale, finding or scoring a nice system or collection of games. But it was also going home and then having this pile of games on my desk and updating my Backloggery, entering in all of these games manually because it's not pulling from a database. So that made it even that much more fun. But I think part of me kind of got too lost in the collecting mentality, and it's really twofold for me, because part of it, I did discover games that I never would have otherwise played, like the Castlevania and Dragon Quest games on the DS, Nights into Dreams on the Wii, Mushroom Men and the Spore Wars on Wii. I mean, I could literally go down a crazy list of games that I never would have otherwise played. Many of the games I actually still have today, but I think part of it too was me going into stores and just saying like, oh, this game is published by Atlas. This is an RPG. I need to buy this. Sakura Wars So Long My Love on PS2, the collector's edition. Heck yeah, I'll buy that. $30, why not? And I just started getting lost in the collecting mentality without any real purpose. And it was getting to a point for me where I wasn't even buying games that I really had an interest in. It was more, I need fuel or I need content for my pickup videos, so I better buy a nice fancy stack of games so I can talk about them. And so thankfully, over the years, I kind of came to my senses, and I've since purged a lot of that, but I think a lot of it too was just going to college and not having the time to pump dozens of hours into these big JRPGs. Sort of. I mean, actually, I kind of take that back, because one of my fondest memories in college, my freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, is every year I made an effort to play a different DS Dragon Quest game. And so I just remember, oftentimes Friday nights or Saturday nights, as pathetic as it sounds, while a lot of people were out getting drunk and partying it up, I was crawling up into my bunk and putting on like Avatar and the Last Airbender, binging that and playing, Dragon Quest 4 or 5 on my DS. But there were just a lot of games that I didn't have the time to play. It was something like Dragon Quest that was more mindless. And so a lot of that collecting mentality kind of went by the wayside in college. And then, thankfully, I met my wife in college, Lauren. A lot of you probably are familiar with her. She's Gizmo's Game Room out on Twitter and Instagram. Definitely give her a follow. She's doing some awesome stuff. But when we got married, thankfully she was super, super supportive of my hobby and the collecting mindset, because she's also getting a lot more into video games than she ever had previously, because she grew up playing games with Ryan like Call of Duty, Destiny, Halo, Skyrim, Smash Brothers, things of that nature. But things like Kingdom Hearts and RPGs in general weren't something that she would normally play. So it's really neat that, it's almost come full circle for me. And I feel so fortunate once again that now I have someone in my life that I can help open up her eyes to this entirely new and giant world of video games that I, 10 years ago never really knew about. I mean, obviously I played, like I was saying, video games a lot more than my friends did, and I was always wanting to explore new genres and find new games, new hidden gems, if you will. Now I can share that with Lauren, which has been just so cool to see her eyes light up playing a game that maybe I discovered 10 years ago, like Dragon Quest or like Kingdom Hearts. It's just been really neat. But before I get into, like what I collect or what I consider myself, quote unquote, still collecting today, I do just want to circle back to what it was like finding deals in the early 2000s, and certainly even when the YouTube gaming community was alive and thriving, which is what I consider to be like the 2008 to 2012 or 13 timeframe. You could still go on eBay and find really great deals. You could find lots of PS1 games, RPGs, and you could actually make out like a bandit with some of those games because they hadn't skyrocketed to the prices that you see nowadays. Stuff like GameCube and Super Nintendo and Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. I mean, it is quite nearly impossible to buy into or collect for any of those systems affordably nowadays. And, it's only a matter of time before stuff like the Wii and maybe the Wii U, PS3 and 360 right now, it's a great time to collect for stuff like that because, one, those games were printed in such mass quantities that it's not going to be a while before stuff like that goes up. But stuff on PS3, there is some stuff that's really kind of climbing in price. And it's just becoming so increasingly challenging to find deals because more than anything, the mom and pop shops, the half-price bookses of the world, the moms that and the just the parents and the grandmas that are selling their kids' collections at garage sales, they know how much these games are going for. And then sometimes they think they're going for a lot more than they actually are. And so it really takes the collecting joy out of it a little bit. If you're hoping to go to garage sales and score stadium events or an entire library of PS1 RPGs, the chances of that happening are nearly impossible nowadays. And, just a few stories that I have, back when it was a little bit easier to make out with a great deal. I remember going into half-price books, and this was when I believe I'd started my YouTube channel at this point. and I went over to the video game section and I saw minty, fresh, complete in-box copies of Pokemon Gold, Pokemon Silver, and Pokemon Pinball just sitting there on the shelf, and I got them for $10 a piece. Nowadays, you walk into Half Price Books, the original Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, just the cart, is behind a bulletproof glass wall and can only be unlocked by the store manager casting the Aloha spell. Like, that's how crazy it's become nowadays. And it really kind of sucks in a certain sense because there's a lot of games that I played growing up that I would love to revisit. And the Game Boy Color in particular, I love the boxes for those games. And I, of course, never really kept my original boxes growing up, or I sold them because I was just really bad about that growing up, trading things in so I could buy new stuff. And it's just so expensive to collect for things like that nowadays, and the GameCube as well. It just stinks that things have skyrocketed in price so much, but at the same time, I think it causes you or me or whoever to really cherish the one or two games you can potentially afford a month to get for something like the Game Boy Color or the GameCube, because it's not as easy to just fork down $60 and, eBay ships you off 12, 15 GameCube games or in-box Game Boy Color games. It just doesn't work like that anymore. And so I think it is more just about appreciating the gems that you can potentially find and buy and purchase and affordably get, even if it isn't in the excessive quantities that some of us would like. But I also remember a time when I was walking into GameStop. And I remember this mom was there with her son, and they had this huge bag of original Xbox games. And this was a time, I think GameStop at this point, they're starting to take trades in for retro consoles, and I think you can also purchase retro games from their online store. But I remember them having this big bag of original Xbox games, and this was, again, when I was getting more into trying to discover new games or repurchase some of the games I'd gotten rid of growing up when I was on YouTube. And the store manager person had just turned them away and said, no, we're not accepting Xbox games anymore. We're not accepting PS2, GameCube, really anything pre-360, PS3, and Wii. And I would think I was in line getting ready to buy something, and I said, hey, would you mind if I took a look at what you had? I'd be more than happy to pay you guys for any of the games that I might potentially want, because he was just looking to unload. He'd given up on all of the childhood games that he grew up with, and he was looking forward to getting the Xbox 360 at that point. And so I was kind of sifting through the bag, and I saw perfect condition copies of Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. And I said, hey, I really would love to buy these games off you. I'll pay whatever you guys are looking to get for them. And the mom was like, we're not going to make you pay any more than $5 a piece for these. And I was like, looking back on it, I wish I would have been like, listen, no, you guys can get a lot more for these games. They're worth more than just $5 a piece. But I gave them $10, and I got 2 copies of or a copy each for KOTOR 1 and 2. And stuff like that, just, it rarely happens. I mean, that's a time and place situation, but it's rare that you're going to walk into someone that's trying to unload a collection of stuff, and you're there in time to get it, and then they're also just like, yeah, by the way, we'll basically give this to you for free, virtually. It's definitely just a different time, I think, and I don't want to be, I'm not trying to come across as like some negative Nancy and saying that people shouldn't collect video games, because I still collect video games. I still frequent eBay, and Pete Dorr, he has every Saturday night, he has eBay streams where he literally just browses eBay and tries to find great deals for his viewers, and he does. He knows all of the search strats, and he finds lots of great deals for people. And there's definitely still some great deals to be had on eBay and certainly out in the wild. I know plenty of people that still frequent garage sales, and of course a post and pre-pandemic world and are able to find good deals, but it's just not quite the same as it was, 10, 15 years ago for sure. And it is what it is. It was meant at a certain point, video games were going to be seen for their true value, and people would have been charging for them more because, hey, they're more desirable now than they probably ever have been. So it is what it is, my friends. But what I do want to also kind of close this whole discussion out is, okay, so my strategy used to be buy everything, buy as many video games as I possibly can without any rhyme or reason or purpose or even desire to play that specific game. It was just, I want as many cases and as many carts on my shelf as possible. And over the years, I've really purged a lot of the collection and whittled it down to be kind of the Rusty's greatest hits, if you will. And, hopefully here in the next few months to kind of commemorate I guess it'll be the 11-year anniversary of my first YouTube video, I do want to do a proper game room tour, kind of just walking people through what it's been. What a great kind of bookend to the Ari Lewis 2011 channel, just seeing where I was as a literal child when I was unboxing the Dragon Ball Origins 2 video game versus kind of what it's become today and what I'm really proud of what it is and the games I have on my shelf. And here in the game room behind me, I have kind of this wall of games, and to each side of my desk, I also have like two little mini shelves of games too. And kind of my MO, my thought process with it all is, if I can't fit the games on that shelf or on those three shelves, then it's time to do, have an honest look at the games that I do have and figure out what needs to go so we can make room for some new games and give some of these games that have given me a lot of joy over the years, potentially a new home to someone that can enjoy them just as much as I have. And so that's kind of my thought process. These three shelves, that's about it. And when I say fit them on the shelf, I don't mean playing a game of Tetris and shoving them in and stacking games. I want it to look well presented and just presentable so that when people come in, it could be a unique experience where people can come in and browse through the library of games and say, oh my gosh, you have SSX Tricky, or you have NBA Street Volume 2, or Battlefront 2, or the Mario Party games, or Diddy Kong Racing on the N64, whatever it is, so that, friends, family, whoever it might be, can have this nostalgia trip with me, or they can browse through the library of games and say, oh, you have Rocket Robot on Wheels? I never played that, but I always remember seeing my friend play it when I would visit him at his house. Do you mind if I borrow that? I want it to kind of almost be, as I said, the Rusty's greatest hits, but kind of a blockbuster of sorts where people can come over and potentially experience games that they never experience. And the whole YouTube gaming community aspect kind of comes full circle, where now I could potentially recommend people some new games. And I hope to do the same with my kids someday. I was talking with a friend of mine that listens to the show, and I have 5 Jinjos behind me. It's 5, right? Yeah, 5 Jinjos, little plushie dolls on the top of my game shelf. And what I hope to do someday with my kids is, first of all, play Banjo-Kazooie with them, have them experience the joy of that game that I once played growing up back in 1998. But hopefully they take a liking to the game. If not, no big deal. I think the concept would still apply is, Friday night after work, Lauren and I log off and hiding the 5 Jinjos around the home so the kids can try and seek him out, just as you have to do as Banjo in the actual video game. I think that would be pretty neat. But yes, so all in all, I really kind of whittled it down to just be the games that I want it to be. Every game on my shelf either has a story or a purpose or an intention to play, and when it doesn't, then it's time to let it go. That's kind of my thought process. But nowadays, what do I really collect? There's really just a few systems that I focus on. I feel like for me, the PS1 and the PS2, that the library of games for those consoles are pretty much endless in my eyes. And I'm always looking for new games to add to the collection that cater to my interests, which is typically licensed games, 3D platformers, other just kind of janky adventure games that might cater to my interests is kind of what I'm looking for these days. But I also love going to game stores, typically, mom and pop shops, and I love finding boxes of Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games, and just grabbing a handful of those. And typically you can find them for pretty cheap depending on the store you go to, and continuing to add to my collection of cart-only Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games, because it's just such a treat sometimes on a Saturday afternoon, sitting down on the couch, pulling out the Game Boy Advance SP and just popping and playing, 5 to 10 Game Boy games for 10, 20, 30 minutes a piece. It's just such a joy to kind of re-experience the joy that console gave me as a kid. And that's another library of games that it doesn't take up a lot of space in the game room. I literally right now, I want to find a better way to display them. But right now I just have a giant Ziploc bag full of however many Game Boy carts that I have. And so that's kind of where my collecting has changed. It's more focused, and I like that about it. But I think that is ultimately the beauty of what makes this medium so special and so unique, is that everyone's different. Everyone's tastes for video games is somewhat unique and different from the other person. And in the same vein, I think people's video game collecting habits are different and unique. And I don't really think there's any right or wrong way to collect video games or play them. I think the only thing to be mindful of is, as long as you're buying the games that bring you joy, and the collecting aspect of it isn't a detriment to you or any of the people that you love or any of the people that are around you, then go for it. Whatever collecting looks like to you, however you define video game collecting, go for it. Continue to pursue that, because I know for me, it's brought me so much joy. This medium of video games continues to just fill my life with so many amazing memories, and my memories growing up playing games with my parents or my friends or my neighbors, whatever it is, video games have always had a place in my life. And I can say with absolute certainty that video games are always going to have a place in my life. And I'm just so thankful that my wife has also taken such an interest in games. And it's just also been such a joy to record this podcast with my brother-in-law, Ryan, who also has such a similar interest in playing games and keeping an open mind to experience new games, because that's ultimately what I think it's all about. And I'm not even sure I made all the points I wanted to. I don't even know if anything I said made any lick of sense, because I've kind of just super duper hyped up on coffee right now, and I've just been staring at my screen talking for whatever it's been at this point. I think a little over an hour maybe. So hopefully all of you have found this somewhat entertaining. It's a conversation, again, as I said earlier in the episode, I love having, even if it is here with myself staring at my computer screen and I'm just speaking into the void that is the internet. And I'm just hoping that someone hears this, someone enjoys it, and maybe you will go to YouTube or record a podcast episode in response to this, sharing your thoughts about how your collecting habits have changed over the years, whether you're a part of the YouTube video game community or not. I still think everyone has a unique and special journey as it relates to playing games and buying them and collecting, and how our tastes have changed as well. So thank you so much for listening to this. Once again, I hope it was fun and entertaining. And here in Ohio, the weather's changing. The snow is melted. The birds are finally chirping. There's not a cloud in the sky, and the sun is out. So I would encourage everyone out there, wherever you are, if you can and the weather doesn't prohibit yourself, go outside, go on a nice walk, obviously being mindful of social distancing and wearing a mask and keeping in line with all those protocols, because we're almost there, people. We're almost there where, hopefully as the vaccines become more available, we can start traveling again. We can start visiting our families. We can finally go to concerts again and experience the thrill of live music and vacations and expos like I've never been to a PAX East or West or an E3 or whatever else, conventions of that nature, just meeting up with people. I miss it. But before all of that and until then, you can at least go outside, soak up some of that good vitamin D that we all need in our lives right now, and breathe some of that fresh air, all right? Because we all could use some of that right now. Once again, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and next week, the next 2 weeks, Ryan and I will be battling it out with the March Madness Otaku Brothers character bracket, and I will be dropping that probably later tonight or tomorrow on Monday, depending on when you listen to this episode. So stay tuned, everyone, and we will see you very soon.